Your support matters, with 90% of our viewers yet to subscribe. We need your help to keep creating engaging content. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below. Hey everyone, welcome to today's story, a tale of love betrayal, and the painful truth that sometimes the paluk we trust the most can become our deepest wound. But before we begin, I have a question for you. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a relationship betrayal? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might find comfort in knowing they're not alone. Let's get into it. For months, my life had been an endless loop of deadlines, client meetings, and airport terminals. The thrill of solving complex problems fueled me, but the long hours had come at a cost. My marriage, once full of laughter and warmth, had started to feel distant. My wife, Sophie, had stopped complaining about my work trips. She used to call me non-stop, missing me, asking when I'd be home now. Conversations were short, almost forced. At first, I told myself it was just an adjustment. She was getting used to my absence. But then little things started to feel off. A new perfume scent lingered in our bedroom, one I had never smelled before. A silk robe, expensive and delicate, hung in our closet, though I had never seen Sophie wear it. And then there was the unopened bottle of her favorite wine, hidden in the back of the cabinet. Sophie never drank alone. Wine was for us, our moments of deep conversations, of unwinding after long days. So why was this one untouched? I pushed the thoughts aside, blaming exhaustion. But deep down, I knew I just didn't want to admit it. Then came our anniversary, 30 years. Together I wanted to make it special. I left work early, drove 10 hours straight, and stopped by the florist to pick up a bouquet of her favorite yellow roses. Imagine the way she'd smile when I walked through the door, how she'd tease me for being sentimental. Maybe we could finally reconnect. But when I pulled into our driveway, my heart dropped. A car I didn't recognize was parked outside. I told myself it was nothing, a friend, a co-worker. But as I stepped inside, the unmistakable sound of laughter, her laughter echoed through the house, then Eamon's voice. I froze. The bouquet slipped from my fingers. I should have stormed in, demanded answers, but something stopped me. Instead, I turned back to my car, grabbed my phone, and did something I never thought I'd have to do. I recorded through the crack in the door, their voices. We're clear. You're sure he doesn't suspect anything? The man asked. Sophie giggled. Note at all, he won't be back until Saturday. By then everything will be perfect. I gripped the phone tighter. The man hesitated. And if he does find out, you went, Sophie whispered. He's too wrapped up in that stupid business of his. I swallowed the lump in my throat. The woman I had loved, built a life with, raised a family with. She had written me off, as if I were nothing more than a paycheck. The weight of reality hit me in waves. First disbelief, then anger, then something deeper, determination. I could have confronted them right then and there. But no, that would be too easy, too simple. I wanted her to feel the weight of this betrayal, to watch as everything she took for granted crumbled around her. And so I walked away, not out of weakness, but out of strategy, because Sophie had no idea who she was dealing with. The next morning, I woke up in a motel, the reality of what had happened still sinking in. My phone buzzed, calls from Sophie, unread messages from our kids. I ignored them all. Instead, I made 2 calls. The first was to my lawyer. I need a divorce attorney, I said, my voice steady. The second, a locksmith, because by the end of the day, Sophie wouldn't just be losing her marriage, she'd be losing her home too. I drove away from our home with a tight grip on the steering wheel, my mind replaying Sophie's words over and over again. Every ounce of love I once had for her felt like it was disintegrating, replaced by something colder, something sharper. I had built a life with her, shared my dreams, my struggles, my triumphs, and in return, she had dismissed me like an afterthought. The road stretched ahead, but I wasn't driving. Aimlessly, I had a plan. At a small diner just outside town, I sat at a corner booth and pulled out my phone. My lawyer, a trusted friend I had known for years, picked up on the second ring. "Hey, it's me," I said, my voice steady, but laced with a weight I hadn't felt before. "What's going on? I need you to start the divorce process today." There was a pause. "Divorce? Are you sure about this?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. I caught her. "She's been seeing someone else. I have proof." My lawyer exhaled sharply. "All right, I'll get everything in motion. Do you have a plan for how you want to handle things?" "I want everything done legally and fast, and I want her out of the house." There was a longer pause. "You know, this won't be easy. Even if we move quickly, there are steps to follow. Are you sure you want to push her out? Immediately, she's the one who betrayed." I said firmly, "I won't let her continue living in a home that I built while she disrespects everything." Weird, I could hear the understanding in my lawyer's voice as he sighed. "All right, I'll draw up the paperwork. You should also change the locks. You don't want her sneaking around while we're handling this." That's already in motion. After ending the call, I leaned back in my seat, staring at the cup of coffee in front of me. I had thought about this moment before, in passing, during rough patches in our marriage, but I had never truly believed it would come to this. The memories of our life together rushed in like a tidal wave. Our first apartment, the way she used to curl up next to me, tracing patterns on my skin. The night we found out we were going to be parents. The laughter, the quiet moments, the love that once felt unbreakable. And yet here I was, planning how to dismantle it all. By the time I turned to town, Henry had already done his job. The house, the one we had shared for decades, was now mine alone. I stood outside for a long moment, staring at the front door, knowing that when Sophie returned, she would realize just how much her betrayal had cost her. It wasn't long before I got the call. "What the hell is going on?" Sophie's voice was sharp, filled with anger. "Why can't I get inside?" I let the silence stretch, listening to the frustration in her breath. "Are you seriously locking me out of my own home?" she snapped. "This a chill dish even for you." I exhaled slowly. "It's not your home anymore. Sophie, you lost that right when you decided to bring another man into it." The line went quiet for a moment, and then she laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "Oh, so this is your big move, locking me out. What do you think this is gonna do? Make me regret it?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let her sit with the silence. Let her feel the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "You didn't just betray me, Sophie," it finally said. "You betrayed everything we built, and now you get to live with the consequences." Her voice cracked just slightly. "This is ridiculous. You can't just throw me out like this." "I already have." Before she could argue further, I ended the call. I expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, some sense of justice, but all I felt was exhaustion. The house was silent. The air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves carried the memories of what had been lost. I walked through the halls past the framed pictures of vacations, holidays, and milestones. Each one felt like a ghost of a life that no longer existed. The next few days passed in a blur. Lawyers' paperwork, calls from friends and family who had started to hear whispers of what was happening. Some were supportive, others shocked, But the one call I wasn't expecting came late at night, just as I was about to turn in. It was my Luke dad. His voice was cautious, hesitant. Mom told me what happened. I sat in the edge of the bed, rubbing a hand over my face. And what did she say? That you're overreacting, that you're trying to punish her over a mistake. A mistake. I clenched my jaw, swallowing down the surge of frustration. She made a choice. I said, evenly, a choice that destroyed everything. This isn't about punishment, Luke. It's about moving on from someone who doesn't respect our family. There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. I don't know what to think, he admitted. But I don't want to lose my family over this. His words cut deeper than anything Sophie had said. I closed my eyes. Neither do I, but some things once broken can't be fixed. The line went quiet again before he finally said, I just hope we can figure this out. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my room, staring at the ceiling. Sophie had betrayed me, but the damage extended beyond just the two of us. Our children, our history, everything we had built. She had shattered it all, and now I was left picking up the pieces. The weight of betrayal sat heavily on my chest as I stared at my phone screen. Dozens of missed calls from Sophie, unread messages from our children. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the time for emotional outbursts. I needed to be smart, methodical. I checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town. The walls were thin, the bed creaked with every movement, and the air smelled of stale coffee. But none of that mattered. What mattered was what came next. I replayed the recording I had made, listening to every word, every laugh, every lie. Sophie had been so sure I would never find out. She had spoken about me like I was nothing more than an afterthought. I had spent 3 decades building a life with her, providing loving, and in return, she had given me deception. I took a deep breath, studying myself before making the first call. Ryan, it's me. Ryan had been my lawyer for years, a friend even. He had seen me through business negotiations, contracts, then minor disputes. But this was different. I need a divorce attorney. I said, my voice firm. There was a brief pause on the other end. Are you sure about this, you? And Sophie, I'm sure, I interrupted. And a need to move fast. Can you help me? Of course, I'll start on the paperwork. Do you want to serve her immediately? Hesitated for only a second. Yes. As soon as I hung up, I made the second call. Locksmith service. How can I help you? I need my house locks changed, I said, glancing at the time. Today, the man on the phone hesitated. We usually require 24-hour notice. I'll pay double. I cut in cash. That got his attention. We can have someone there within the hour. Perfect. Hanging up, I leaned back against the headboard, exhaling slowly. The plan was in motion. Sophie would come home, expecting to walk into our house, into the life she had taken for granted. But instead, she'd find the locks changed. She wouldn't know what hit her. An hour later, I drove back to the house, keeping my movements swift and precise. The locksmith arrived right on time, a wiry man in his late 50s who didn't ask questions. Within 30 minutes, every lock had been replaced. He handed me a fresh set of keys, nodding. Anything else you need? No, this is perfect, I replied, slipping him an extra $100 bill. Thanks. As he drove away, I stepped back and took in the house, the home I'd built, the home Sophie had so carelessly betrayed. I wasn't done yet. I went inside, grabbing a duffel bag from the closet, moving through the house. Methodically, I packed everything that belonged to me. My clothes, my documents, my valuables. anything that mattered, I left Sophie's things untouched. Not because I was being generous, but because I wanted her to see them. I wanted her to walk in and realize in an instant that everything had changed. By the time I finished, the sun was beginning to set. My phone buzzed again. Sophie. I let it ring. She could wait. I wasn't going to explain anything over the phone. No. I wanted to see the look on her face when she realized she had lost everything. An hour later, I parked a few blocks away, waiting, watching. My heart pounded steadily as I saw Sophie's car pull into the driveway. She stepped out looking carefree, humming to herself. She walked up to the front door, then she reached for the handle and it didn't turn. I watched as confusion flickered across her face. She tried again, then again. Fumbling in her bag, she pulled out the keys, trying them one by one, but none of them worked. Panic set in. She knocked on the door, then banged Ethan. She called, "Are you home?" I waited a beat before stepping out of my car. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, her face shifting from confusion to relief. "Ethan, something's wrong with the lock. My key isn't working." I stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. "That's because it's not your key anymore." Her smile faltered. "Would he change the locks?" Her mouth opened, then closed. You changed the locks." I nodded my expression. Unreadable. Yes, for the first time I saw fear flicker. "In here, yes. Why would you do that?" I took a slow step forward. "Because, Sophie, I know silence. Pure, deafening silence." Her face pulled. "Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about." Don't I cut her off? "Don't insult me with more lies." She swallowed hard, glancing at the house at the locked door that had once welcomed her. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to talk. You should have thought about that before you let another man into my home." I replied, my voice steady. "Before you laughed about how blind I was, before you decided I was nothing more than an ATM." Her breath hitched. "Please, Ethan, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." I tossed a folded envelope at her feet. "Divorce papers. My lawyer will be in touch." She stared at the envelope like it was a bomb, her hands trembling. "You're really doing this?" I already did. Tears welled in her eyes. "Ethan, please." I turned away, walking back to my car without another word behind me. Sophie called my name again and again, her voice breaking, but it didn't stop. For the first time in months, I felt nothing but clarity, because this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about taking back my life, and I wasn't looking back. I drove away from the house without a second glance. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that felt foreign. My heart was still racing, but now there was a strange peace settling in. The adrenaline from the confrontation with Sophie had worn off, and in its place was something unexpected: freedom. It was an odd thing, realizing that my life was no longer tethered to a woman I had once loved. For years, I had devoted myself to her, thinking that we were a team. But the truth, the harsh, cold truth, had been there all along, hidden behind her smiles and whispered promises. I wasn't sure where I was going. My apartment wasn't an option. Too close, too familiar. I needed distant space. After an hour of driving aimlessly, I ended up at a small diner. It wasn't much, just a roadside joint that looked like it had seen better days. I stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. As I walked in, the place smelled of coffee and old wood, the kind of scent that felt like it belonged to a different time. I slid into a booth near the back and waited for Emily to approach. She was in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and a soft smile that seemed practiced. "What can I get you?" she asked, her pen poised over the notepad, coffee black. She nodded and turned to go. But before she could leave, I added, "And a piece of pie, apple if you have it." She paused, glancing back at me for a moment before nodding again. I leaned back against the booth, resting my head against the worn cushion. The weight of the past few hours was catching up with me, but I couldn't afford to dwell on it. The decisions I had made, changing, the locks filing for divorce, confronting Sophie, had all been necessary, but they didn't come without consequences. I'd done what I had to do. But now I had to figure out what came next. A few minutes later, the waitress returned with my coffee and pie. She placed it on the table in front of me, her eyes briefly meeting mine. "Anything else?" she asked. "No, thank you." I waited for her to leave before I took a sip of the coffee. It was hot bitter, and just the kind of comfort I needed. My thoughts were racing again, but this time, they weren't about Sophie or the divorce. They were about the future. What did I want now? For so long, my life had revolved around building a home. With Sophie, I had put her needs before my own, never questioning that she would do the same for me. But in the end, she hadn't. She'd betrayed me, and that betrayal had shattered everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. I took a bite of the pie. It was sweet, tart, familiar in a way that reminded me of simpler times of a life before everything had gotten complicated. But things were complicated now. There was no going back. I spent the next hour in the diner finishing my coffee and pie, letting my mind wander. When I finally got up to leave, I was still uncertain about what to do next. I hadn't even decided where I was going to sleep that night. As I stepped back into my car, my phone buzzed. Sophie. Again, I didn't answer. The thing was, I wasn't angry anymore. I had been so angry, but anger was exhausting. I'd learned that over the years. It ate away at you, consumed you, until there was nothing left but resentment, and I wasn't willing to let Sophie do that to me anymore. I took a deep breath and drove off into the night, not caring where I was going, only that I was moving forward. The next few weeks were a blur. There was the paperwork, the legal battles that seemed endless, and the emotional toll of watching my marriage crumble before my eyes. But amidst the chaos, I found a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding. My first move was to hire a therapist. It was something I'd always dismissed in the past. I had always thought that I could handle my problems on my own, that I didn't need anyone's help. But after everything with Sophie, I knew I needed support. I needed someone to help me make sense of the mess my life had become. Therapy wasn't easy. It was uncomfortable, forcing me to confront parts of myself I had long ignored. But with each session, I felt myself growing stronger. I began to rediscover who I was, outside of the role of husband and provider. I also started focusing more on my work. There had been times when I had allowed my career to take a back seat to Sophie and the family. But now, with the weight of the divorce looming over me, I poured myself into my projects. It was in those moments of quiet determination that I realized something important. I didn't need anyone to complete me, not Sophie, not anyone. I was whole on my own. One evening, after a particularly grueling therapy session, I found myself walking through a park. The cool air on my skin grounding me. The leaves had begun to turn the deep reds and oranges of fall, spreading across the trees. It was beautiful. I stopped on a bench and took a seat, watching the sunset. As the last of the day's light bathed the world in golden hues, I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let fear or betrayal dictate my path any longer. The next chapter of my life was waiting for me, and I was ready for it. As the months passed, I found strength in the less Lukes life had thrown my way. The divorce, though painful, had been the catalyst for change. A change I hadn't anticipated, but had desperately needed. I have built my life not by chasing happiness, but by learning how to be content with myself. Sophie's attempts to reach out became less frequent and eventually is stopped. Checking my phone when her name flashed across the screen. I had no interest in revisiting the past. I was far too busy embracing the future. One evening as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a gentle breeze ruffling my hair, I realized that the man I was today was stronger, more grounded, and more self-assured than the one who'd walked into that diner. All those months ago, I had survived the storm, and now for the first time in a long while, I was ready to see where the calm would take me. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a soft golden glow, and in that moment, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be.